I call it the fog of war. What I find is when I'm operating, even though I have all that knowledge in my head, sometimes I have blinders on. And so forest time is the practice of taking time off to see if you can elevate, to get above the tree line so you can resurvey, see if you need to make adjustments.
Welcome to LaunchPod, a product management podcast from LogRocket. Today, our guest is Oji Udezue, an AI product expert, author, and an innovation-focused, multidisciplined business leader. Oji has had an extensive and successful career spanning his time as CPO of Typeform, head of product for creation and conversation at Twitter, CPO of Calendly, and head of product at Atlassian. Today, LogRocket's VP of Marketing, Jeff Wharton, talks to Oji about his upcoming book, Building Rocket Ships, the complexity of product management due to its multidisciplinary nature, and talks about the zone of benefit concept, which helps assess market disruptiveness and emphasizes the need for a high value to price ratio to drive change in customers. So here it is for our conversation with Oji Udezue.
All right. I know it feels like every one of these I say I'm excited and I am, but I have been waiting for this one for weeks and weeks at this point. So Oji, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. I'm excited to be here. Seriously.
No, I am going to try and keep us to time, but I wrote an outline that was like 5 pages long. I edited it way down. You got the third edit, I think, at this point. So I'll try and behave, but there's just so much cool stuff here. Let's dive in. I guess first and foremost, you had a book that you're writing, huh?
Yes, I am. I'm writing a book with my partner. And we've had an incredible journey as PMs from PM1 to become executives. And we have such a passion to give back. We know that this game, we do many things, but we're mostly product people at this point. And we know that this is a hard and very ill-defined profession. And so we want to help with that, help people more definition, more stuff, more frameworks, more tools to be excellent. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
It's fine. You say just product people or mainly just product people, but I feel like product is one of the main roles where you are rarely just, the best are rarely just, right? You come from a different background, engineers, UX people, you bring in a lot of kind of psychology. I feel like it's one of those things that the whole thing is solving problems and getting you from A to B. And the better you can do it, the better you are. And it's rarely just one discipline. Is that accurate from what you've seen, or?
It's almost a renaissance job. Every day when I'm a great product person, I'm an engineer, I'm a designer, I'm an anthropologist, I'm a psychologist. I use the principles of behavioral economics, leadership, communication, writing, negotiation. It's just so much that goes into being really good at this because, one of my favorite sayings is that we are the center. If you're in a really good company, and you care about providing value to customers, and that's the way you make a lot of money, then product people are your biggest weapon. They actually increase your return on capital if they're really good. So, but there's no school for it. It's the last thing in EPD without really great schools and great pedagogy at the college level. And so we're trying to help solve some of that.
Yeah, I do feel like that's something that is needed in the market. It's just better education. There's a lot at the kind of very young level or very junior level, but there's not a lot to help people continue to ascend. And it's funny that you bring up kind of that it's at the center, right? Because I feel like if you look at a lot of startups and successful startups that have really zoomed up, it kind of really hits on a lot of those ideas that to be great at product, you're coming from multiple different angles and it is the product that matters. And so many of these, companies are flying high, but they have the thing in common that their founder is still, the CEO, but it's still the product visionary pushing them forward. And that's, I think, an interesting kind of thing I found that you talked about that's going to be in your book is kind of some of these frameworks around, picking ideas, where to fish, ideas that you put really well that I've been kind of thinking back in my head about how much better you have to be. And my team will tell you in general, I love frameworks. I love a good framework. I think it just helps catalyze a team around an idea and help communicate so much better. So can you maybe, before we dive into some of the details of some of these frameworks that you're going to discuss in this book, why are frameworks so important to you, do you think? Why do you think they've been so powerful throughout the years?
You just hit on it, right? Like frameworks are useful in several different ways. So first of all, just a quick and dirty definition. A framework is essentially like It packages truths, right? And approaches in easily digestible sizes. And they're useful for the content of, is it true? And is this approach the right approach for this problem? But it's also a tool for leadership, right? Since they're truths, right? They are easy to launch and they're packaged. They're easy to launch into a team. They're easy to help people focus on the right problem. So one of the first things I do when I join a new company is always to find the right frameworks for the workflow and for the problem we're trying to solve. Yeah. So I think they're useful because they're dense. One thing that I encourage people to do though is don't just stop at the framework. You got to figure out why the framework works. Like what are the first principles of this equation that you just received? Because then that allows you to modify it, change it, and adapt it to the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? You can go company to company, and you can't just port over, the playbook from one to the other. So how do you? I guess you've had a lot of career changes. I mean, you've been at Calendly, you've been at Twitter, you've been on Microsoft. Companies are fairly different, if I may say so. So how do you kind of enter an org and look at it and discern what am I going to do to move the needle here? Like, how do you kind of pick from that library or adopt what you need to and adapt it?
Look, I think that leadership, especially when you change context, like a company, is really about first diagnosis. It's about figuring out what is the problem I need to solve as a leader here in order to create the most change and the most profit or whatever it is that facing. And part of that is what are the frameworks that work for the things that we're working on? Because you have to communicate that to people. Like at Twitter, I remember like for the first 6 months, I was just distilling. I was like, what is the flywheel of Twitter? How does it really work? Like not the obvious stuff. Oh, people are tweeting and following and liking. Well, like, how does this machine actually work? How do you turn the crank faster? And so honestly, my process is like what framework works for the two things I think about: the workflow. What workflow are we
Mhm.
solving for the people, for the planet? What problem are we solving? Sort of a different take on the same idea. And then I say, okay, what frameworks work? And frankly, if I can't find something, because you have to, one thing about facing your problems, you have to be parsimonious, meaning that you have to create simple but accurate hypothesis, and you have to try and tailor it very closely. If it's too loose, if it can fit 10, 100 companies, and it's not tight enough, right? It needs to be something that fit this. And so I remember at Twitter, to create the right frameworks, I actually just I had to create some frameworks myself. And then I pulled in from other relevant ideas and relevant, one of the people who inspired me actually was the creator of TikTok. And some of the things he said were so insightful, so deep. And I found that very useful.
Well, I mean, so you kind of nailed what I was going to ask next, which was how often, because I've talked to a lot of product leaders to kind of talk about frameworks are great, they're nice, but over time, what I've had to do is take the ones that I like and figure out how to kind of take this half and piece it together with that, and, hodgepodge it, and you kind of create a multi-headed beast almost. But then you fit it in the right way. How often have you found that you're kind of going and creating something new or hybridizing something maybe versus can kind of just think straight through?
Yeah, it's not very often, right? Because the point is frameworks have to be truthful, right? And since they are truths, they shouldn't change very often unless the environment or the people change dramatically. Like competitive environment changes or the world itself changes. Like, COVID was a huge change. And so some things needed to change in terms of how people viewed the problem and the frameworks they used to attack it. But when a company grows really fast, that's also a change. Right? A company's life cycle of growth actually qualifies because growth itself causes external factors to change: revenue, people that you attract, professionals that need to power the company, competition, market environment. So you do have to draw on maybe different frameworks
Hmm.
over time or change the parameters of the framework over time, but not wholesale, because
Oh,
if a framework doesn't sort of encapsulate truth, then it's not worth the paper it's written on.
that's fair. I guess it's more the tactics that are driven by kind of the findings change more than the fundamental structure. Like we just went through an exercise. So here SDRs report into the marketing team, so into my team. And
Interesting.
one thing we tried to boil down to is what are the kind of key levers that we can just pull. What are the main drivers, right? Like, how do you break it down to just most elemental pieces? And there's a few things it comes down to, but they're not going to change company to company, right? Like,
That's
how do you
right.
focus
That's
on the
right.
right account? How do
That's
you
right.
get,
That's right.
yeah. And those are things, and how you pick which ones you go after, how you attack that is what kind of change company. So that's a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
point.
That at close to that execution level, it's not going to change very much because it's a specific workflow. Marketing is a thing that you can break it down into maybe like 4 or 5 really high level workflows. Sales, same thing. But like the stuff above that, the conceptual stuff, who do you go after versus how do you
Right.
tackle it when you go after them? Why are you going after them? Like, what is the underlying thing? Those can change over time as the growth cycles through. But at that level of resolution, honestly, frankly, it's just execution workflows, and they're pretty consistent.
Exactly. Now, one thing that I found interesting you've talked about before, kind of thinking of again, product is the center. And so you go to market, you bring in, maybe a new idea forward. I love that you had the idea of kind of like zone of benefit as a framework that you talk about. And it's something I thought of, I couldn't quite catalyze, and you just put it so perfect with, I was really jealous. I gotta be honest, it was really well done. But can you explain kind of this idea of zone of benefit and what it can mean, maybe, especially today's economy? I feel like this is really, really pertinent.
One of the things that I see with founders and investors is that we're very excitable. I've been both, so that's why I'm saying we. We're very excited. And some of the rookie mistakes people make are like, I love this thing. I feel this problem. I got to solve it. But the question really is, are there like 10 million of you in the economy? Because you could be completely isolated. And so you're never going to make a lot of money from solving that problem that you have. And I've made that error, trust me. So I know exactly what I'm talking about. The other thing is like, is this thing as existential for a lot of people? Right. So like the idea of zone of benefit is the idea that when you're focused on disrupting a market or workflow, then you have to just deliver much more benefit, right? And more value than the alternatives. And the alternatives can be competition, or it could just be like nothing, because nothing is also like a viable alternative sometimes, right? Even if it's a virgin space, you have to deliver way more, right? Now, usually you want to deliver a lot of benefit at a very affordable price. But of course, if your premium price is your strategy, you can also deliver a lot of benefit at a premium price. That's a business model thing. What the idea trying to understand is the thing you're battling is switching costs, right? And switching costs are really two things. That can be hard costs or they can be just psychological and change aversion. This is where you get into the philosophy of, human psychology. People don't like change, right? And so to lure them out of that change cave, you have to deliver something like 3x plus benefit at a very affordable price. If you don't, people are like, oh, it's better. It's like 2 times better. It's like, 1.5 times better. Oh, it's just better. And you're like,
Right.
oh yeah, people are going to pay. No, they will not. You have to understand that you're battling something more primal than just a little better. And that's what zone of benefit is about, is like, whatever you thought you could do, you have to do just a little more to make it so obvious. Because, it's that obviousness, 3x of productivity. Think about Calendly for a second. Calendly, just like you're a marketing person, the salespeople around you because, it's go to market. Getting one meeting can be so hard, right? You email back and forth, da 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 da. Calendly just solves it in like 10 to 10 seconds. That's like an order of magnitude of productivity, right? If you're using that tool. And so for people who use it in a mission critical way, it's like 10x better.
Oh,
All right. So on that 10x, they're like, I'm gonna pay for it. I'm definitely gonna pay for it. And you want that's the momentum that makes a company big. That's the momentum that unlocks revenue very easily for you. And if you can't have that, create that emotion in people, it can be very difficult. It's a slog.
now, do you think I've heard a lot of explanations for this, right? One, people have a big fear of being wrong, right? No one wants to be on the hook to say we changed. It's much better to say we stayed with what we were doing. It doesn't work that well, but you can't really blame me. We're just doing it already versus I changed this and it didn't go well. Do you think it's more fear-based, or is it, real actual cost of change, or what do you think drives it?
Very few humans in the world like change, to be honest. Like, and it's not just like in the business arena. It's just, this is human psychology. And so the way to do that is the thing that inspires change has to be very attractive. That's zone of benefit attractiveness. It's like 3x is very attractive. It's a gravitational force. The other thing is that you have to reduce the opportunity to be wrong. People are like loss aversion, change aversion, huge. Like in psychology, loss aversion is like a huge idea. People would rather make a buck than, make, don't want to lose $1, right? And they will prefer not to lose $1 than to gain $10, right? Hypothetically. And so that's the thing you're dealing with. So the other thing is reducing the cost of that loss. For example, if I give you a product that's 3x better, but it has a free plan or it's freemium, it has a trial, you can just check it out and there's no cost. And your boss isn't going to be mad at you because you make this huge, big decision and make this huge commitment. Now what can we guess?
I think that nails it, Ray. How do you protect the downside and
Yes,
make people really excited to move?
increase the upside potential and make it so undeniable and protect your downside. That's really what it's.
Love it. And then you've talked about another one, and we'll go through this quickly. I got so much I want to talk to you about, but I love this idea of kind of also frameworks for kind of looking at a product or a problem you're going to solve, or maybe an expansion, and you get into kind of like it's something people use a lot or they don't use often. High frequency, low frequency, everyone kind of niche. And can you go through, maybe I'm the founder. I'm thinking of I brought you an idea. We're discussing it. And this is how you think it through, right? Is that the right kind of concept of where to use this?
It is. There are 3 people who benefit from this framework. It's like founders, because they have to calibrate their time and what they're spending, the problem they're spending time on. I've built a company and not gotten what I wanted out of it. And so that was like 2.5 years of my life. And if I'd had this filter framework, right, I'd have been so much better off. And that's why I created it, because it was something I went through. But also investors, what should you invest in terms of yield and return? And if you're an employee and you're looking for a job, you should be able to assess the companies you're going. That's a significant investment on your life force as well. So, this idea, I called it the unicorn framework. And it's really, I think it's much more specific to B2B, but I'm sure it's more generalizable, just so that I didn't run the numbers and the validation for other things. But it's really this idea that you can use a simple framework to predict how successful and the revenue and growth potential of a B2B SaaS company based on very simple information. Meaning, how often do people execute the workflow that you're targeting with your technology and your product in their day or in their week, in their month? How often do they execute that workflow? And the other idea and simple information is whether that workflow is a broad one, right? Does it cover most people in the enterprise? At Atlassian, we used to talk about team communications as going from the doorman to the CEO, right? That's a very broad use case. They all need to use it. Like email is broad, right? And or niche, when a single department or a single person, like stuff for HR, stuff for sales, or stuff for MarTech and so on and so forth, is sort of niche. And you can take information on whether it's high frequency or low frequency workflow execution for a person, or whether it's niche or broad, and sort of calculate the opportunity. And the idea is that it goes into a quadrant, a 4x4 or a 2x2, where the Bain Group loves a good, they just gave the world this devilish tool, and now we'll talk with it. But it's high frequency, everyone workflows are the most valuable. And then high frequency niche workflows are the next most valuable, right? So frequency is basically the Uber factor. And then you have a low frequency niche and low frequency everyone workflows. And low frequency everyone is better than low frequency niche. And these strategies, these workflows, I believe that the world is workflows. Even like waking up in the morning is a workflow. Going to work is a workflow. So I don't do use cases anymore. I just divide. I think of what do people, because a workflow encapsulates like a larger, broader goal, right? And it multiple transitions. In fact, a job to be done, a workflow is actually multiple jobs done linked together. And I think that's how the resolution that companies and PMs and marketers should think about, because that gives the most scope and actually gives a lot of scope to customer discovery anyway, but that's a whole other thing.
No, and I love that idea though. That's smart to like kind of widen the aperture, because you look at something like a ramp, which is huge, obviously super successful. You could say finance people that close the book. That's kind of like what that would be, a few people and kind of infrequent, right? Is that
yeah
kind of accurate?
exactly. Yeah,
You close the books once a month.
It's niche and it's infrequent. Yes.
Right. But they've gone from now
Right.
that they run credit
Right. Like,
cards. They've reached across the entire, everything such as finance and every employee, credit cards, travel, and they've really done a great job of just hitting everything. And it's just so everywhere at high frequency, right?
yes.
Um,
So actually, you can navigate this frequency box. Usually, people can start in niche, high frequency, or in infrequent everyone. And the idea is to navigate your way from low frequency to high frequency to everyone. Like that's a path of travel. Anyway, using this framework, you can literally figure out how big a business will be. The biggest people in our industry, the Googles and the Microsofts, play in high frequency everyone basic productivity because it has the most yield. You can charge $3 per user and you're still rich. You're still making
Right.
billions, right? And you're Atlassian, you're making like 2-3 billion, right? It's high frequency, niche, and then
Yep.
everything else is below that. So it's a really good like first filter on figuring out opportunity for yourself as a founder, as an investor, as an employee. And it seems not as obvious as it seems, even though it's pretty simple. And I've done the back checking on revenues and market cap to figure this stuff out.
I love that you did you ran the back data. You back checked your data. That's great. I mean, I could not possibly be happier about that because that was the first thing I would do is pull a bunch of public comps and go check. So that's sweet. Cool. And so I know we touched on it before, but you've got a book coming out that touches on this, right? And covers a lot of this stuff. Is there a time frame on that yet or?
Yeah, just very quickly. It's a book for really senior product people, right? Like senior product managers, principals, and above, up to the CPO. And actually, it's a T because you'll be surprised at how many people in the C-suite don't really understand product. And so it's for them too, right? Because
I'm going to read this book. So
to understand how best to collaborate with product managers is really good, but also maybe even to inspire them because some of them don't even know what they're supposed to be doing. And so so there are 3 parts of it. It's called building rocket ships because it's really about, a technology company is basically code, the product, and the business itself. It's this 3-layer sandwich. And it addresses all 3, not just like, oh, be a good product manager. It's like build a rocket ship, which is build a great company. And there are 3 parts. It's a clear definition of product management, maybe in a way you've never heard about it before, and how applying it makes you more profitable, return on capital. And there's some math just to figure out like scenarios. And then the other one is like, second part is like how to do PLG. What are the things you need to do to build a fast growing company, to price well, to onboard well, to deliver a great product, to be viral, to think about network effects. These are all things that you have to do they all have to come together to build a really great company. Sometimes people get lucky, but you don't want to get lucky. You want to be intentional. And then the last part is how to lead PLG, right? How do you lead teams that center customers, right? While centering the business model as well. And so those are the 3 parts of the book. So yeah, the frameworks aid the story. They are not the story.
It's funny you bring up, it could be a wider red book than, I like the A you're going for. You're going for not niche, but everyone there.
Hey, you have to apply your own lessons.
Yeah, eat your own dog. Well, drink your own champagne. That's a new way of saying it. But also, I mean, I do think we had, agile, we had design thinking, all this things. I do think product thinking is an important part of running a business. Like we look at marketing here like a product and how we think through it. We prioritize it. We use a lot of the frameworks you've talked about to look at how we're going to operate. I do think a lot of people could benefit from.
You know what? You guys, why your company is growing so fast, right? Like, I'm serious. People don't underestimate. In fact, anytime I find like an ecosystem, Austin or the Bay Area, Seattle or New York, look underperforming their potential is because people don't hire enough product managers, good ones, right? Early on, right? They hire a bunch of developers and salespeople, boost revenue, and they top out of ideas. They don't know how to navigate out of that. And that's a problem. And the book is for, it's also, like early product managers want to know what later product managers are doing. So it's going to cover the spectrum on that front. But like I said, it's also for the C-suite, but they want to get a good head start. And the premium version will contain models, frameworks, templates, the kinds of things that you hear are problems. Like, how do you actually do it? What do I use? What is my tool? And so that's what we're going to do. Oh, and a part of the book will be free. So this is a freemium book. No, I'm not joking. Like parts of it will be PDF. I want people in India to download it without having to pay a toll. I want people in Africa to download it because
Yeah.
I want this knowledge to spread.
Zone of benefit, you're reducing the downside risk.
There you go.
I do love how you you implement the stuff you talk about. But all right, so that's coming out. Excited for that. I'll be
September.
September. All right, here we go.
Pre-orders are going up soon.
All right, I'll be on the pre-order list right when it goes up. So I do want to dig in a little bit more, right? We talked about before we started recording that one of the things that drove us to do this is, frameworks are great, but kind of what does that look like in real life? And I'd love to dive into a few of those with you because you've got some good experience. Told you Calendly was something that we've had deep philosophical conversations about Calendly and other similar options here. And it goes on still. 2 years later, we're still talking about kind of a couple different products we could use here. But you were at Calendly kind of as it really, was continuing to explode. And you've talked about, there were a lot of other calendar options, right? It's not like you guys just came to market with some miraculous new thing. So
Acuity was that 10 years before we got there. Yes. Right. And actually, when I was building my startup in New York, I ran into another team called X.AI. Their whole thing was they could give you like a scheduling email assistant, basically. Mm-hmm. Once you said, oh, this person wants to schedule with me, they'll start emailing them back and forth and until they found a good time.
I think I remember that thing actually.
But at the tail end, when I joined Calendly, they started copying us and then they just ran out of money and they closed. But, even before we got there, like people like Acuity and a few others had been in the market. So the main thing I think was Calendly was just better in many ways. So we understood that it wasn't a winner take all market. We understood that there was still lots of headroom in the market. At least not I understood actually. Tope, my boss, understood that. Yeah. And a lot of this stuff is stuff he started, but I just helped continue, basically. Again, because of some of the things I've already learned from all my previous rodeos. So a few things. Calendly focused on experiencing the non-paying customer. Most of the competitors, because they focus on the person who signed up, right? But paying is a dual thing at minimum. So we directed user experience. Our booking page was the best. It was the lowest friction. It just worked just really well. It was super fast to be compared to the competition. And small things just work, like time zones and so on and so forth. And so what that did was that it reinforced, like once people used it, they're like, oh my God, dude, that was just a great experience. First of all, that's a compliment. So now my $10 is worth it, right? In just one interaction. But secondly, then they signed up because it was so great, right? And that created a viral loop. So, and then we got many difficult things, right? Time zones were a mess. Like if
time zones are tough.
Yeah, if you're in a different time zone, blah, blah, like it could easily just be booking in a different time zone. And once that happens, it's like it's a terrible experience for everybody. We never made a mistake there, right? At least not after a little while, because we knew it was important. Again, we're finding pressure points in the business, things to press. It was also value priced, right? So, and freemium. It was a free plan you could do forever. You started out on a pro plan so you could get hooked on it, classic. And then we covered a lot of calendar types. There are like 10 different calendars at scale in the world, right? From mobile phones to Exchange and so on and so forth. And we kept covering more and more of them. So there was never an excuse not to get Calendly. And then we goosed the viral engine. We knew it was a 2-man job to schedule. And so we created a payoff page and we would ask people to sign up, which people didn't do really well. So taken together, most products just did not match these benefits that we brought to this market. And so we just won. A great brand too. Yeah.
I mean, it also like visually looked great and was just, easy to use, but you hit it, Rob. I think time zones is a really important one, right? It's a nit. A lot of people just overlook it and say, oh, you can just do a drop down and pick your time zone or whatever. And people will do that. But when you're scheduling a meeting, sometimes every click or, time, you're already kind of trepidatious about scheduling. Maybe you're scheduling with a salesperson. And that salesperson, that's their life and death right there is this meeting. So like making this stuff just work flawlessly and invisibly. But you've talked about you kind of rigged together a whole bunch of stuff that you were really able to take in and process customer signals and customer listening, that kind of thing. And I feel like that's the kind of insight you get from that constant pay attention to signals. How did that process look like? How were you pulling in those signals and utilizing them and understanding what to kind of listen to? And I'm sure most of you just want to kind of push away because it's noise, right? You need to stay focused still at some level.
Yeah, this is a conundrum, right? I always try to I separate two things, two separate like customer information things. One is discovery, right? Discovery is really finding big problems in the workflow to solve. And it requires a little bit of research, deep listening, asking the right questions. But if you go to business, usually on the internet, people are talking to you, right? Your users, your would-be users, people who are using other competitors are also talking. And the thing that a good product team does is to scoop up that signal and then try to sift it and find a signal from the noise. And in short, by the way, this is a perennial problem. Like I was just talking to my boss at Atlassian. There was this project Lighthouse. I tried to build it for all of Atlassian with a couple of like PhD data scientists. When I got to Calendly, I jury rigged it. When I got to Twitter, it was, obviously we had 500 million people a month. And so I did something, I did something different for that. And then when I got to Typeform, I did another version of it because usually it's not actually a solved problem. The tools, for whatever reason, these tools haven't been good enough and scaled. There's no Figma for this problem, although I expect one to happen in the next 5 years just because AI is easier to sift the stuff. But what we did at Calendly, like, which was super crude, is that we, everything, whether it's App Store reviews, G2 Crowd, your churn information, your stuff from Zendesk and Gainsight, they usually have an API or feed. And so we would pipe all these things into Slack as a first thing. And then we created automations that allowed it to be easily assigned to a person and boosted into a system of record like Jira, right?
Mhm.
And then we give everyone a mandate to look at this channel and to pick out interesting things through that noise, right? Things that they hadn't seen before, things that had felt like significant. And so in a way, we relied on the wisdom of the crowd, of the team itself. Oh, wait, we have never seen that. And no one has ever dealt with that. Why shouldn't we take care of it? And so anyone could assign, you could even assign it to me if you wanted, although of course, I'm gonna have to assign it to somebody else. And so once, there's several problems to solve. There's observability, but also a human has to actually go take a look at it and deal with it. Whether it's to say, yes, we've seen this and we're dealing with it, or we will not deal with it. And so that's how we were able to cover a lot of ground in terms of the customer signals that we're receiving. And obviously that we did other things, every 2 weeks or every month, we sat down with sales and we sat down with support to get their top 10 issues. I believe that product marketing needs to be integral to the product team so that those signals came in all the time, et cetera, et cetera.
So what I love about this too is you're at Calendly. At this point, it's a big company. It's not, some 10-person startup. The solution is pipe it in to Slack and have people review it and pay attention. Like, it doesn't have to be complex. This is what I love about a lot of the best solutions here is don't overcomplicate it. Just, you need to listen to your users, find a good way to get that info, pay attention, and look for the anomalies, look for the things that really stand out. And then,
Yeah, don't let the great be the enemy of the good.
Exactly.
You gotta get started.
No, I love it. It's fantastic. I love to hear that because I go back to my team now. Like, no. We're just gonna get it into Slack. We're gonna read it ourselves. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be good. Now you brought up Twitter too, and this is one of those ones I feel like that is interesting because you were there during a very, let's say, change-filled time. But you were working on the Creators Initiative, right? So can you talk very briefly maybe about what that was, just for anyone who doesn't kind of maybe have the full background?
Yeah, you remember that I was influenced by the guy who started TikTok.
Yeah.
He thought of social media growth as he modeled it as economic migration, like from Europe into America. He thought about it in terms of one platform to another. I mean, the idea was there's a finite number of people and creators in the world. Some are not creators already, but will be. And then how do you gain the greatest share, the greatest migration of the best creators in the world? And he thought that was critical. And so most of social media is like an extreme Pareto rule, like 5% create and the rest lurk or emulate, right? And so the key to growth is to stimulate creation or the appearance of creation. Some of it is smoke and mirror, right? It still works as a stimulator. And so the Creators Initiative, by creating it, we sought to more ably stimulate creators through every means we could, including cash.
Good lever.
Yeah. And so we knew that we knew that people wanted this because they told us, but also because other platforms were doing better. Twitter was like the fourth rated for creators, and we had this data. And there'd been other creator initiatives at Twitter before, but they didn't focus on the right kind of creator. Like we had like 7 categories, right? Twitter is good for elite creators, like notable people who break news, people who make news, scientists, and so on and so forth. Well, the problem with notable people is that they're very satisfied, and it's very hard to incentivize. I mean, how much money do you have to pay a scientist who's doing work on AIDS to post about his work on Twitter? Like you can't really. It's very difficult. And we had teams focused on these people if they grew significantly enough, right? But it's just generally cost prohibitive or resource prohibitive. And so we wanted to refocus on a different kind of creator, the ones that weren't necessarily like uh, uh, elite people, but they were very clever. They could create things that made people laugh, that made people interested. Like if you're neuro Twitter, for example, who's the guy who people follow because not only does he talk about interest in neuro stuff, but he's very funny.
Yeah.
Makes people laugh. And so we wanted to stimulate that kind of creator because we didn't have teams arrayed against them because Twitter didn't change. We were focused on the old elite creator. And this is again about frameworks. I had to come in and say, you know what? That focus and that framework is wrong. There's a new thing that's happening in the world because the world has changed. And so we need to change and focus on a different kind of creator to incentivize them.
So it's basically the idea of how do you, rather than have kind of maybe one or two several very large talking heads, how do you build a kind of collection of micro community? Is that kind of the thesis there?
No, it's slightly different. So again, Twitter has a bifurcation. It's like there are creators and they're different kinds. What we did on the Creators Initiative is to focus on a different kind of than we've done before, the clever ones, the ones who just write, the ones who make cool videos, right? We wanted to, we had never focused on them. We wanted to focus on them. And then the rest of Twitter said 95% are people who are literally like, it's not Facebook. This is not your high school team. It's like you're creating friends around an interest graph, right? And for those people, they're not necessarily creators, but they are participators. They're the people who will follow, the people who will comment, who will write something. And for them, it was a different problem. This is very important because we had to separate these problems. If you don't sort of separate and disentangle them, you're sort of doing one thing and it's not working. And so for those people, their problems, the creators were like motivation. Can they do this all day and make money? Do they get enough accolades, right? Do they get a follow graph that gives them the feeling of, oh yeah, I'm the man, right? Those are their motivations. Right?
Self-validation.
Yeah, validation and money, basically.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Like, and we were very clear. We wrote some of this stuff down. I will show you what it is. But the other side is for the rest of the Pareto rule is feeling connected to the community, feeling like they know how to follow the people they want to follow, and they get the notifications they want to get, specifically tailored to them. And for them, those are the people that we said creating like, easy follow tools. You can follow an interest. We created a communities initiative. Like Twitter now has a community, which hasn't been deeply invested in, but there's a small team created that. And we were shooting for sort of a hybrid between Twitter and Reddit, right, at the time. And the idea was like, you could make Twitter small again. Instead of feeling like this vast universe that you don't know what's going on. It's like, you know what? Here's my F1 team and my F1 crew, and I know how to find them easily. I don't even have to follow. I just need to join. And so those were different motivations.
So was that, I noticed years ago, right? At one point, I think I ran a company on the side that probably qualified me as a very small creator, but now I'm very much on the just ingester and enjoiner side. I noticed a couple of years back, right? It went from, I just got the tweets of people I follow to there was this kind of maybe different view, or maybe it was the same view. I don't remember exactly, where I would find really interesting stuff that was coming in that feed. I never followed that person. It was just the right interest. And that kind of, does that something that came out of?
That's right. Because eventually the follow graph, when Twitter was small, following was amazing, right? It was a small town. It was a small village. When it became gigantic, follow became like a speed bump, right? You literally had to expend calories to get what you wanted. While on Facebook and on TikTok, there was nothing. There was no barrier. So the follow idea had run its course. We needed better tools to get people the content they wanted. And, TikTok is very good at this. But without them doing a thing. And so those are some of ideas came from, where you didn't have to do anything and you got what you needed, what you wanted, and the communities you were after. Yeah.
That was such an important enhancement. Like I probably would have bailed on Twitter if
Mm.
that hadn't changed, because it was just, I kind of, wasn't finding it. And suddenly I just started seeing more and more stuff that was,
The guy who worked on it lives down the street here in Austin. Is a good friend of mine.
oh, nice. Well, if you see him, tell him I say, well done. Say it to one person at least. So, now let's totally change subjects a little bit. As much as I love talking with the background of Twitter, is I've been using that since the early days. But you had this concept that I think is so important. You called it forced time.
Forest time. Forest.
Forced time. Oh, that's way smarter than when I wrote it down, and I totally misheard it. That's so much better even. But forest time, right? That makes more sense. And that's the whole idea, is you pick up and you look at the forest of the trees. But can you, I'm going to butcher if I explain it, so maybe I'll let you explain kind of what it is and why it's so important. I'll probably call it fourth time again and go on a Star Wars riff or something.
No, I think once I explain it, you won't call it forest time anymore. It's forest time because it comes from this idea that you want to be able to, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the trees are so close to you don't realize there's this amazing, like, big preserve around you.
Mhm.
And enjoy it at all, if that's your purpose. And the idea here is that when you're operating, like your job right now, the things are coming at you fast, right? So fast, you have to lead, you have to think, you have to do, you have to chart the future, you have to communicate, you have to communicate with the C-suite, you have to communicate with the team. And I think that, I call it the fog of war,
Mhm.
right? Every time you're in that operating role is a fog of war. I do a lot of consulting, speaking for not just like on stage, but for teams, right? I will consult with the team of various companies. And what I find is when I'm looking at a problem from the outside, I usually have a lot of perspective. I can see, no, the good thing about my career is that I've done product design, marketing, a little bit of sales, and I have a master's in engineering. So when I look at an organization, I see like a broad picture. I'm like, you know what? I can see a problem here, problem here, problem. You got to fix this, fix that. But when I'm operating, actually, even though I have all that knowledge in my head, sometimes I have blinders on, like
Mhm.
so fast. And so forest time is the practice of taking time off, right? To see if you can elevate, to get above the tree line, so you can resurvey your strategic and your tactical situation. So you see if you need to make adjustments. It's very hard to do that when you give yourself no time. You're going from Monday to Friday to Monday to Friday. And so what I try to do for myself, and it's very difficult because, time, is every month I will take like a couple of days and I will go through a very specific exercise that elevates my view so I can know whether I need to change something. They only like 12 months in a year, 52 weeks. It's not a lot of time. And if you don't do this, you just keep doing the same old thing, including all the mistakes you are making. And what I try to do is to get my team to do the same thing, my executive team. So all
Mhm.
my Ps, maybe directors, I say, you got to take this time off. It's counterintuitive, but I find that the benefits outweigh the costs.
Well, it's the difference of, right, like, if we look at early on here at LogRocket, we did session replay, we help people fix bugs. If we
Mhm.
just never ever picked heads up, you were just straight on, maybe you can create a little bit better visibility, a little bit better integration. At some point, you're not solving, like you said, you look at workflows, not just jobs to be done, and you start
Mhm.
to broaden out the scope of that. And
That's right.
we'd be
That's
focused
right.
on just that same problem versus looking at how do we solve the problem of how do you bring these teams together and create a better solution to kind of create a better digital experience for your users. And that encompasses product teams, engineering, UX, and so much more. So, but if you
Yeah,
don't,
and it's best. What I try to do is make sure that I try to force it on my officer staff. Like if you're in the military, there's the officer corps, the commissioned officers, the people who go to West Point, the people who lead, because I need them to have perspective. I need them to be able to
Mhm.
say, this isn't working. I need them to say, wow, look, there's another problem that's actually more important. I don't care if I'm halfway through this, like, we're not going to do that. And that's what forest time does. It gives perspective. It sort of clears the fog of war for you wherever you are. Now, people who are, I don't want to say rank and file, people who mostly execute because of their seniority, I want the same thing for them, but it's more important for me that their leaders have that, right? That clarity. Because that's what lets them, often the people who are close to the work actually see the realities. You just, sometimes we're not listening. Sometimes we're just like, here's our mission and our vision and our strategy and blah, blah, bang, bang, bang. No, like sometimes those things need to change because of the things on the ground. So you need to keep listening, but also you need perspective.
So, I mean, that makes sense, right? I think some of the biggest things we have started to do here came from, it's funny to bring up kind of the less senior people. I think some of the bigger impact things we've done here have come from those people on the ground raising up and going, I think we should do this. We should do this. And it's interesting is several times actually, the pushback has been, no, it doesn't fit into the block. It doesn't fit into, and actually once or twice they went off and just kind of did a little experiment on it themselves, came back and said, hey, this resonated really well with those results. It was like, well, shoot, I guess we got it. Because of that, you were right, we were wrong. But, it's I love the idea of picking up because, even those people when they're doing it can show us, hey, maybe our heads are down a little too much too. So
Yeah,
good
no,
lasting.
100%. Like the way I talk about this, I know you want to talk about something else, is your job as a leader, part of your job anyway, is to mine all the intelligence on your team.
Mhm.
So you have to be paying attention to the edges, right? The smallest person on your team, you have to have channels to listen. Like if we're listening to our customers who actually don't know really what we do, they're very needy. They just have their problem solved. Why won't you listen? Well,
Customers are needy. Not our customers. Our customers are wonderful, but companies in general are definitely needy.
and there's nothing wrong. I just like saying
No,
that
no.
they're needy. They don't know the technology. They don't know how to solve the problem. They just have, it's just like raw meat.
Yeah.
Solve it for me. I'm paying you. You better solve it. And no, but no, I don't mean, I love customers, obviously.
Yeah.
We're in this game. We're in this game for them.
Luckily, our
And
customers will be smart enough to know what we mean here. So
we're in this game for them. But I will also say that the thing you need to do is there's intelligence everywhere, right? Especially if you've hired a really great team. Why aren't you listening to them,
exactly.
right? And so you have to, as a leader, you have to create a system that allows you to also listen to your employees, right? And to consider the ideas. It's not always the best, but there's always gems out there, and you have to encourage it, the flow. And so
Yeah.
that's what I believe.
No, I think that makes total sense. How do you, if you're not going to listen to someone, probably not, maybe hire someone else.
And that's right. People hire smart people and then don't listen to them. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
No, that's a use waste of money at that point. I like to say I want to completely subject jump here because I
Okay.
have a bit of a hot take. I think you're opposite. I'm curious to see where we land on this one. You are really bullish on PLG. I
Mhm.
mean, it's covered in your book. Or will be covered in your book. I've been through several PLG companies. I do think it's not going anywhere, but honestly, for me, the shine has fallen off a little bit at times. Not completely, but like I see other paths. Like, what's your thought on, given kind of where the economy is right now? I think situationally is more what I'm talking about right now. I've seen
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
companies are a little more hesitant to kind of move that way, and they want more, protection from up high or a little bit more executive decision maker involved before they're pulling the trigger on things that maybe historically would just been critical. Like, what is your view here?
Yeah. So I think probably the reason that you think we're on opposite sides is because our definition of PLG is different, right? And I think once I define what I think is PLG, I think you're probably on the same side. But before I do that, I will acknowledge a tactical time that we're in. We're like in the middle of multiple forces. We have the expectation of, you know, recession / soft landing going on, business tightening. A business tightening environment doesn't really favor PLG very well, right? Because it's literally the opposite. What favors PLG is growth and people scrambling to drive growth. And therefore they are procuring the tools they need to drive growth a little loosely. They're doing what they need to compete in the marketplace that is crazy. In a tightening environment, people are like, pruning their tools, trying to save money. And so the permission to grow at all costs, to find the tools needed to create productivity isn't as prevalent. And so purely PLG techniques can suffer, right? But remember, it's a business cycle, right? This is going to turn around and the other thing is going to come about. And so it's not wise to just say that there's a cycle that something's working or not working. What I try to do is, in the book and otherwise, is to get beneath why it works in the first place, right? And so here's where I define PLG. PLG, frankly, is two things. One, you focus, it's not just the front end. It's not the go-to-market. People think it's a go-to-market flavor. I don't think about it that way. I think PLG has to go through the bones of a company. And I think part of it is product-led, not necessarily the growth part. You have to have a company that focuses relentlessly on customers and creates product that customers love. And a company that thinks of product not just as the widget, but as everything that touches the customer, every experience, every customer experience, including the product, is probably 90% of it. Well, growth is a touch point, support a touch point, account management is a touch point, sales can be a touch point, is that they prioritize a perfect or near perfect customer journey through all of that. That is what I consider PLG, really. Not just the how do you sign up and whether you throw sales at it or you throw growth at it and so on and so forth. I think I feel like that's I'm about to say something that might feel insulting to some people, but I don't think that that's the full understanding. Like PLG, frankly, is adaptive. It's like, how do my customers, mine, want to purchase this product? What is their psychological mask when they're thinking about this problem? So in that case, if sales is the biggest lever for creating the bridge that gets them to say yes, then that's what we're going to deploy. What is wrong is when salespeople do not understand that the product is a center and they promise features that will never deliver, or they try to optimize for one deal, then it's a totally different thing. Atlassian is like one of the creators of PLG. They have a sales team. Why? Because they understand the business cycle. But of course, anyone can sign up. But over a certain type of people with the right, qualified leads, then it's a sales process. And so they have to sort of govern which way it goes. But they have both tools in their tool set and they can use it properly.
I should have just phrased that question differently because I should know that you were to put it in a way that sounded really intelligent. I said it when I said it, and it was immediately thinking like, this is not quite what I mean because, from our perspective, and my perspective, right, the product is the most important. That you can't, I tell my team all the time, you can't sell someone something they don't need. And you really shouldn't sell someone.
I know that about you guys. That's why I knew that we're not different. I know that. No, seriously. I knew immediately that we're not off on the same. Right. We're literally on the same.
Delivering a great product and being centric about the company is about how do we deliver a solution that's going to solve a problem. Yeah. And, whether it's sales or when you swipe a credit card that's part of solving the problem of how you need to buy. Now,
all a problem. And to be honest, you have to realize that a lot of companies are about what can we do to make revenue.
Right.
But you need to think, what can we do to solve customer problems and make revenue? That's a difference. That's a central difference between PLG companies and non-PLG companies.
And oftentimes, if you're solving the problem very well, the revenue is going to be a lot easier to figure out how to do versus if you try to optimize for revenue and then throw a solution at it. And so that's product led. That's exactly, I'm on board. It's just more, I worry a little bit about, okay, we're on the same team. All right, Oji, we can be friends again. I'm sorry I tried to put up a rift between us. No, but that's exactly the key, right? And this is something I feel like people forget about PLG so much is they look at how do we growth hack this onboarding or this sign-up flow or this other thing. And it's how do you solve the problem? And those are the key. And you need to do it in a way that makes your onboarding easy.
The mindset of my particular customer. What is
it's back to the nose of benefit, right? Like how do you make it so much better?
Yeah. What is the thing that assists their sense of value and their ability to say yes. Is it them? Is it their boss? Like whatever it is, you deploy.
I love it. That's we're redefining PLG. If that's in the book, I'm sure it is.
I think
I'm
that should be the original definition. I'm
yeah.
struggling here with that disconnect.
Yeah. I'm gonna take that page out and like Ted Lasso with the believe potion. I'm just gonna put that page up on a door here and everyone's gonna see it. All right. Last thing. A/B testing. This is another one of those things that I feel like there's a lot of kind of the crowd wisdom has kind of come full circle on or keeps going around and around where you get kind of the growth hackers who like test every single thing. But some level there's also understanding your customers, put out a great solution, and trust your maybe taste or trust your wisdom a little bit and trust your knowledge, I guess. Where do you think about A/B testing and like the balance of testing versus some places you just gotta be opinionated?
So the thing that I tell product teams is A/B testing has become dogma. Like if you're not A/B testing, people think there's something wrong. And this is one of those frameworks, and not even a framework, one of those memes or things out there that I don't like at all. Because then people don't understand why you should even do it. Just because you have tools like an A/B test doesn't mean you should A/B test everything. Well, first of all, A/B tests, especially for a B2B SaaS company, take time. I've done tests that take a month to come to statistical significance. A month before I can make a decision. Are you kidding me? Like at the pace that we have to go? Why? Right? And just by saying we have to do an A/B test, you feel like you have cover. Well, that's not enough cover for me as chief product officer. So like you A/B tests things that have high uncertainty, right? If there's high uncertainty, you A/B tests if it's important enough. Now, consumer technology is different. Facebook can A/B test something and get to significance in a day. And so for them, having A/B tests, and Twitter, we could do the same thing. So having A/B testing frameworks at scale that just work is very high leverage, right? But for B2B SaaS companies, you have to think about it because the time is prohibitive sometimes, unless you're one of those. If you're Microsoft, sure, you have millions of customers. But if you have thousands of customers, then you really have to think about it. Now, the last thing I'll say is, how do you reduce uncertainty without A/B testing? You talk to customers. You get into their minds. You get into their workflows. You watch them. You observe them. You show them and make them. You make them co-owners of the development process. You show them the sketches. You show them the concept. Maybe you show them a prototype, which is the things you would do anyway. But all you're doing is you're bringing customers along for the journey. If you can do some of that for the bigger things, or maybe even the smaller things, then just have confidence, deploy the thing, use customer listening to refine it, right? That might be faster than just making religion of A/B tests. So I think in summary, at that scale, A/B test what is high uncertainty. And if it's not high uncertainty, just build it.
There's been kind of this push around, I've heard it called lightning testing, which is, we've tried it out a bit and I've gotten some very good signal. I think I tend to like it is maybe run the tests, don't go quite as high at the bar. Cause right, you can gain a lot of speed just by reducing your confidence bar a little bit, but do the research, come in really well informed. And you can bang out 10 tests, maybe in the time it takes to do 1 to 95% because you're doing maybe like 70% or 80% confidence. But
I think of lightning tests more like research, right? It's like,
exactly.
It's like a barometer, because the thing about A/B tests, they're a statistical tool. And so if you don't hit the confidence level, then you can't answer the question. So to me, lightning test, concept testing is all tools for like gaining confidence without actually doing an A/B test. And you should do as many of them as you can.
Yeah,
that's a framework. Like, framework is not A/B testing. The framework is increasing confidence in what you're doing.
Right. I guess that was a good last piece of wisdom to end on, because I am running out of things to ask right now. I'm not running out of things to ask. I got like 3 more pages of it, but we're running out of time. I want to be accommodating in your schedule and not hold you. I could talk to you all day, but I feel like that would probably not be the best use of your time. So let's leave it at, people, want to follow up and ask you questions or opinion or anything. Is there a good spot to reach out to you on? Is it LinkedIn? Is there a place to reach out maybe on the site about the book or?
Right. So follow me on LinkedIn. Usually that works, is I try to publish on LinkedIn whenever I can. Follow me on Substack. That's where I try to drop whatever wisdom that I have from all the years of operating, things like this podcast. Follow me on Twitter. I guess that's the third thing. I will also try to post
Makes
shorter
sense.
things on Twitter. The Substack will be where like you will, Twitter has a bunch of stuff. You can sign up for the book and get notified on pre-order, and you can get a free workbook on product-led growth. I'm building rocket ships already. I've put out there. It's a really good workbook. It's hosted on Coda. Shakir is the CEO, is a friend of mine, and I love that product. And yeah, so that's how to follow, reach out. My mission is to help as many people in the world as I can be great product people so that we can
Right.
accelerate the making of very valuable companies. So I'm working on it, just getting
Love it.
started.
That awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Oji. It was a pleasure. It was a blast. And hopefully we get to talk again sometime soon. So, but
Yeah,
best
of
of luck
course.
in the book launch.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. We appreciate the luck, and it was amazing talking to you. I enjoyed it.